Want to buy a church?
My name is Christoph Lange. I've been trying to sell this church for about a year and a half.
As congregations dwindle, thousands of churches in Germany stand empty. And then one day, the final service is held, and the church is closed forever.
That's it. The end of a journey. Very painful. Could it be torn down? Yes, of course. It depends on the investor. I don't see it. It's out of the question.
Perhaps someone will want to sell bicycles in the church or open a pub. But more on that later. Once a place of worship, now a family home. The first time I came here, I remember thinking, wow, amazing, so spacious, so special. Christoph Lange is giving it his best.
Look at the view you have from here. This is the highest building. And from up there, you'll have a view of the whole valley. It'll be fantastic.
He extols the virtues of a converted church roof. The real estate agent has a new prospective buyer for Christ the King Church in Morsbach-Ellingen near Cologne. Dominic Ventura Jaume is a successful architect and renovator of old buildings. He's traveled all the way from Spain to see the almost century-old Catholic Church, and he's come with a plan.
The project would involve using the former roof truss of the church as residential space, and the actual church area as space for events and a meeting place for artists. There'd be a lot of Brazilian artists, guitarists, singers. I'm originally from Cologne, and since the church isn't that far from Cologne, it would be a temporary private retreat for me for the year.
175,000 euros, a bargain. But due to the expensive renovation costs, there's a dearth of interested parties, well, at least of serious ones.
There was recently a lady who wanted to turn it into an office and live here. She was very emotional, but in the end, it turned out that the emotions were there, but the funding wasn't.
The neighbors have gotten used to the empty building. The final Mass was held here in 2020. Personally, I'd like it to be kept as a church, so that services, funerals and the like could continue to be held here. But there are other very different visions too.
Every time I drive out here, I can't wait to hear the next new idea. I even had someone who wanted to store their tractors here. The church should be used in an honorable and sensible way. That's important to me as a practicing Christian.
The devout Christians of St. Anna Church are lending a hand. They're removing the relics from the altar, such as the bone fragments of the saint. This is called deconsecration. St. Anna is being closed, and it's the final Mass in the small Catholic church on the Dutch border.
It touches the heart and the eyes too. It's moving. Very emotional. You had to fight back the tears at times.
For the final farewell, the church is full for once.
9 was the lowest I ever experienced. But to put it quite plainly, that's just not fun. It was full once last year, golden wedding anniversary. I always say it's not the pastor who closed the church, but the people who stopped coming.
Not much will change for me. There are plenty of other church services. The holy relics are being moved to another church. St. Anna has become a secular building. And now what?
The main plan is for residential development, but really it's totally open, because it depends on which investors we end up talking to. Could it be torn down? Yes, of course. Depends on the investor. Nothing can stop it. It's everywhere. We'll probably see a lot more churches closing in the future.
Indeed, but why? Here are the official figures from churches. In 2024, less than half, 45.2% of the German population identified as belonging to the two major Christian traditions, Catholicism and Protestantism. 30 years earlier, it was just over 2/3. That's why more and more churches are empty. There are around 44,500 church buildings in Germany. The best case scenario is that 1/3 of these will continue to be used exclusively as churches. The second third will be used for other purposes in addition to church services. A library, for example, as in Müncheberg in Brandenburg. Or a concert hall like the one in Oelsnitz in Saxony. Practical, financeable ideas.
And with the last third, what will happen to them?
Klaus Martin Brescott, art historian for the Protestant Church in Germany, also poses his question to the architecture students with whom he regularly discusses the future of churches. Here at huge St. Stephen's in Berlin. What made St. Stephen's so exciting for us is that the need for change is palpable. It's a clear case, a large, completely unused space in the middle of the city. And dilapidated to boot. No entry.
And the people here need a place for their neighborhood, their community. So we saw this church as an opportunity for something new. Yes, it's especially important that it's not just reserved for a select group of people, the church congregation, but is open to everyone through a variety of uses. It was too big at the time, but could now be useful in making something out of it.
The adjacent St. Paul's is a building designed by Prussian architect Karl Friedrich Schinkel. These days, it sees very few worshippers, which is an incentive for the students.
It was important for me to preserve this faith aspect, to preserve this space for faith, and also to create a space that's perhaps not just Christian, but also open to Judaism and Islam. Since the neighborhood here isn't just Christian, there are other religious influences too.
We visit the office of art historian Klaus Martin Brescott, who also looks to other European countries where the same challenges exist. The aspiring architects present their ideas, not pipe dreams, but concrete concepts.
I thought about planning a late-night diner in there, open 24/7, to make it more accessible and simply draw attention to this place. You'd have a meeting point for the different cultures, where people would come together over food. The ground floor should be as public, as accessible, and above all, as flexible as possible.
There are spaces for sports, for young people, for culture.
You might lose 100 people, but I think you'd gain thousands from the neighborhood.
Pensioners can do sports there in the morning, and after school young people can come and play a bit of soccer. And in the evening, the school band can perform.
There have always been times when people saw churches as important, and other times where they viewed them as unimportant. We know that during the Napoleonic Wars, churches were used as stables for decades, but they remained standing. And now we're living through a time of reorientation, and that includes our attitude to religion. But that's not to say we should wring our hands in despair and simply give up on it all.
So is everything allowed in church? A short trip to Jülich, to Tom's Bike Center, formerly the Catholic St. Rochus Church. How did it come to this?
The parish approached me and asked me if I could imagine running my business in the church. This is the church where I was baptized, where I went to communion. I've always had a certain connection to this place.
Now it's chain grease instead of communion, and racing bikes instead of relics. And all this in a listed building built in 1961 to the design of the famous church architect Gottfried Böhm.
Do you like the building? It could have been nicer.
For church expert Brescott, it's a borderline case.
But once it becomes an outright commercial centre, then its original essence is lost. And that should never be given up. With every conversion, you should keep the original roots in mind, what it was made for. That's in the stones. And if you can still feel that, even if it's repurposed as a bar, it can still be a community space. I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
This building in Tangermünde on the Elbe is a prime example of this. And very much in the spirit of community. Located in Essen in the Ruhr region, the former Protestant St. Luke Church is now a kindergarten, apartment block, and physiotherapy practice. Jessica Günther is one of the managers here. If we go up there, that's the area where sermons were preached. So it's a different feeling, a lovely, peaceful feeling. And there really are, or were, people who came in and said, "This is where we got married. This is where I was confirmed."
I think it's good that the church is being used for such purposes, helping people in need and being there for them. That's basically what faith is all about.
The family upstairs, the Schröders, are very satisfied. No one's ever complained that I live above an altar. We were looking for a 4-bedroom apartment with good schools nearby, within walking distance. That was important to me, and that's what we have here. Very worldly. But the truth is, it's no longer a house of God. It's a city property with neighbors, and these have mixed feelings about the end of St. Luke.
I didn't think it was good for all the religious old people who went there regularly. It was practically their life. A piece of their life has been cut away.
I live right there in the corner house and see it from my window. I was happy it was left standing.
A good conversion is better than a demolition.
Pastor Jan Feldman from the Protestant Church of the Redeemer is now responsible for the former St. Luke congregation.
We'd ring the bells and expect people to come to church at 10 a.m. on Sundays, and that doesn't quite work today. Instead, we're leaving the buildings, going out to the people, seeing what's happening in their lives and their homes.
It's back to the property showing, to the Christ the King Church in Morsbach-Ellingen.
The church is beautiful, and its dimensions are too.
Is the prospective buyer from Spain still interested? Has he made a decision?
Decision? No. My heart is racing a little, but the figures have to add up. I'm a businessman too, after all.
Nothing's been signed, so far. For now, the church is still available and awaiting a new lease of life, like many a church before it.